Ask just about any civil engineer, transportation specialist, or politician what the most sensible form of fixed rail mass transit is, and they almost invariably will tell you, why, light rail, of course. But is this necessarily true? Monorails are a viable option in almost every situation where light rail is planned, but yet officials shrug off monorail with a variety of excuses as to why they could never possibly work in mass transit situations. They turn a blind eye to the obvious, common-sense advantages of monorails. Light rail is a misnomer. Light refers to capacity, not weight. Light rail cars are heavier than most subway trains. The main problem with light rail is that usually it runs in or beside automobile traffic. The movement of light rail cars is dependent on the movement of surrounding traffic. In order for light rail to operate at grade, it must necessarily interact with automobile and pedestrian traffic. Usually, light rail tracks occupy the inner lanes of roadways, and automobiles must either share these lanes or are barred from them completely. In many cases, what was once a 4-lane boulevard is now reduced to just 1 lane in each direction. In many places, light rail tracks are separated by curbs to prevent cars from straying onto their tracks. A nice idea, but then nobody can make a left-hand turn across the roadway. Motorists must either go to the next traffic signal and make a U-turn, if it's allowed, or else make complicated maneuvers to reach their destinations. Those light rail systems that operate on railroad alignments must use railroad crossing arms and bells, interrupting traffic each and every time a light rail train approaches or leaves a station. Monorails, on the other hand, are elevated systems that are completely removed from all automobile and pedestrian traffic. A monorail is not dependent on traffic movement. Indeed, a monorail can soar above any traffic congestion. Any transit system that gets stuck in or slows down traffic can hardly be called rapid transit. Yet politicians, engineers, and consultants insist that light rail is superior to monorail. Let's look at some of the common objections to monorail and the truth that disproves them. The Las Vegas monorail is currently under construction, and at most only 2 lanes of roadway are blocked during construction. After the support pylons and beamways are installed, only a single lane is blocked. Even so, left-hand turns are allowed for businesses and roadways. Plus, these barriers are only temporary. The entire Las Vegas monorail will be constructed in only 27 months, from contract signing to grand opening. Monorail construction is fast. On the other hand, light rail construction is extremely disruptive. At-grade track can take years to install. Elevated sections are a nightmare of closed roads, detours, and visual blight. Businesses along the route fail because customers cannot access their shops. Monorails can be constructed very quickly. Pylons and beamways can be manufactured off-site and simply trucked into the location. This section of the Las Vegas Beamway was installed in only 3 Sundays. Not 3 weeks of Sundays, not 3 months, but 3 Sundays. 400 feet of dual beam track was installed in 1 day. Many Japanese monorail systems are beautifully integrated into their environments. The beams are not obtrusive, and landscaping can blend with support pylons to create a very pleasant aesthetic. Imagine light rail trying to maneuver in this corridor. Monorails can be put just about anywhere, efficiently and quickly. Monorails run on rubber tires and are powered by electricity. They are quiet, energy efficient, and non-polluting. Light rail is inherently noisier because it uses steel wheels running on steel tracks. Anyone who's ever been near railroad tracks know how rail cars can squeal. Light rail is no different. Salt Lake City's TRAX system has gotten so many complaints over noise that part of the tracks have to be greased daily. Monorail beamways vary from approximately 26 inches to 36 inches wide. Beamways stretch from 100 to 120 feet long on the newer monorail systems. The use of telephoto lenses may make some of these monorails look like a wall of concrete, but in reality they are very open and spacious. And new concrete technology, which incorporates composite materials, promise even thinner and longer beams. In Japan, many systems have support pylons 6 or 8 stories high, which raise monorails above the sightlines of most homes and apartment dwellers. Contrast this to elevated sections of light rail. Monorail beamways are sleek and elegant. Light rail elevations look just like freeway overpasses and cast massive shadows to match. Light rail also has its own visual clutter that can't be hid by landscaping or shrubbery. Monorail stations can be designed to fit in with any environment. In the case of the Okinawa monorail, a sidewalk-sized transit corridor was successfully transformed into a monorail route, including a full-size station. A handful of small pylons are all that's needed in terms of real estate. Stations can be designed to fit in almost anywhere, even inside buildings. Elevated light rail stations are certainly not real estate friendly. Besides that, the construction of such a large structure uses considerably more natural resources than a monorail. Sometimes the argument is made that monorails are not safe. Japan has had many major earthquakes over the decades, and not one of their monorail systems has ever suffered any major damage. In fact, during the disastrous Kobe earthquake of 1995, the Osaka freeway system was gridlocked with fleeing refugees. But the monorail was fully operational and proved to be an indispensable transit link. The Disneyland monorail has never been damaged by one of Southern California's major earthquakes, but freeways and bridges were. The Okinawa monorail is designed for all kinds of severe weather, including typhoons. Monorail systems easily handle snow as well. Safety is a major concern for any mass transit system. Unfortunately, light rail's safety record is positively dismal. Yes, it's a funny gag, but the reality is horrifying. The simple fact is that light rail mixes pedestrians, bicyclists, and automobiles, a potentially deadly combination. According to the Federal Transit Administration, light rail has the very worst accident rate of any mode of transportation. System in Salt Lake City had its first fatality in only 100 days of operation. One fatality occurred when the light rail train was only moving at 3 miles per hour. In the past 100 years, there have been no fatalities involving straddle beam transit monorails. It should be obvious that it is impossible for a monorail to hit a school bus or run over a pedestrian. Since monorails are elevated, they are totally independent from traffic and have an unparalleled safety record. Light rail can never make these claims. An illuminating flaw in light rail safety happened during the filming of this video. A trolley was approaching this crossing arm when a fire engine, sirens blaring, needed to cross the tracks. Let's look at this footage again in slow motion. Rather than wait for the crossing arms to operate normally, the fire engine chose to do an end run around the crossing arms. There is the trolley, and the camera whip pans to the fire engine, and the fire engine drives around the crossing arms. Terribly dangerous, but unavoidable in an emergency situation. The fact is that people love monorails. In polls, Los Angeles voters favored monorail 5-1 over other transit solutions. Yet city fathers continue to insist that monorail is not a viable option, preferring light rail or an exorbitantly expensive subway instead. The residents of Seattle had to pass 3 separate pro-monorail initiatives before the mayor and city council followed their wishes. Light rail can only run cars every 6 to 10 minutes. The new Las Vegas monorail will be capable of running a train every 90 seconds. When Walt Disney World needed new monorail trains, several manufacturers bid for the job. Many companies, led by Hitachi and Bombardier, bid on the new Seattle monorail, and the original 40-year-old Seattle all-wag monorail cars are refurbished with off-the-shelf parts, even though the all-wag company closed decades ago. Any light rail manufacturer can make monorail cars and parts if they want. Monorails are not exclusive to any company or manufacturer. Some transportation professionals will tell you that monorails cannot be built in certain transit corridors, but monorail can go just about anywhere. Recently, the Washington State Secretary of Transportation, Doug McDonald, stated that he considered it, quote, virtually impossible to engineer a monorail line along a freeway corridor. The Osaka monorail follows a freeway for miles. Monorails can run at grade level, or as a subway. Anyone who tells you that monorails cannot switch tracks, or have great trouble switching tracks, is either uninformed or disingenuous. The switch myth continues to be stated as fact by many transit professionals who should know better. These flexible switches have been used for decades, and they work flawlessly and quickly. Some complain that monorail switches are too large. But even the largest switches are not nearly as massive as the smallest elevated light rail track. There are those who would tell you that monorails are simply amusement park rides. This is perhaps the biggest myth of all. In Japan, monorails carry nearly 500,000 people a day, safely and flawlessly. Even the Walt Disney World monorail carries over 150,000 people a day, the same passenger load as San Francisco's light rail. and twice the daily passenger load of the Los Angeles Metro Blue Line. Again, anyone who tells you that monorails are unproven in transit applications is either being disingenuous or is seriously uninformed. Common sense tells you that this is going to cost a lot more money than this. Monorails use less materials to build and fabricate, and are constructed in a much faster time, which dramatically lowers labor costs. Depending on design features and engineering, a monorail can cost 1/3 of the cost of light rail. In some cases, engineering and construction costs may be higher, but maintenance, labor, and repair cost savings will eventually offset any higher construction costs. For example, light rail trains absolutely must have a driver on board. That is a given. And remember that 166 people have died over the past 12 years in accidents with light rail. You have to factor in repair costs and the lawsuits. The new Las Vegas monorail will be completely computerized. A handful of personnel will control the entire system from the operations headquarters. An entire monorail system can safely be operated by a handful of people. Monorails have lower personnel requirements, resulting in less overhead. Light rail cars need constant maintenance. Since they run steel wheels on steel rails, there is a lot of wear and tear. Monorails run on concrete beams which almost never need maintenance. New generation rubber tires only need changing every 18 months. On the other side of the spectrum, the San Francisco cable cars need their brakes changed every 3 days. Monorails simply have far less maintenance costs. A recent study in Seattle concluded that monorail costs $5.10 per rider, compared to $20.90 per rider on light rail. Moreover, several urban monorail systems are privately owned and routinely make a profit. When was the last time you heard of a light rail system that was actually making money? Far more likely is the system that endlessly requires taxpayer subsidy to stay afloat. We have seen how monorail systems can be built for far less money and be built far more quickly than light rail. We have seen how maintenance is less for monorail. We have seen how monorail is environmentally friendly and how it can fit into an urban environment. Monorail systems can go almost anywhere, are extremely popular with the public, and have an unequaled safety record. So, why aren't more monorails built? The rail industry has enjoyed a virtual monopoly on all public transit since the inception of the railroads. Most transit experts, officials, and politicians have links or bureaucratic ties to the rail industry. There is a lot of money to be made by building light rail. A light rail line can take years to build. That's a lot of salaries, and bonuses, and pork barrel politics. Some dismiss monorail as an amusement park ride. Others are so uninformed that they believe the disinformation about monorail switches and transit history. Monorails can be built with astonishing swiftness, far cheaper than subway or light rail. Sure, there are fewer jobs during construction, but this is your taxpayer money being spent here. Look at all the facts, and it becomes obvious. Monorail is a viable, cost-effective, and elegant means of mass transit. It has proven itself in nearly 40 years of daily operation without a single fatality, and it's popular with the public. What more could you want from your mass transit system?